Whispers of forgotten prayers, sweeping over the red earth where silence often spoke louder than words. Apache Solitario, the lone rider, pressed onward across the wasteland, his horse weary but steady beneath him. He was a man marked by exile, not because of shame, but because life had taught him that solitude was his truest companion. He bore no tribe to return to, no family left to embrace, and no fire to call his own. All he carried was his bow, his knife, and the heavy memory of days when his people still danced beneath the stars. It was hunger, more than the thirst of the land, that gnawed at him this time. 3 days with only a handful of beans and stale bread had made the once proud warrior feel like a shadow of himself. Yet, as he reached a valley where pigsties lined the edge of a forgotten ranch, his sharp eyes caught sight of something that did not belong in such a place. There, beside the trough where pigs wrestled and grunted over spoiled husks and scraps, knelt a girl. Her frame was fragile, her ribs visible beneath her torn dress. Her face was pale yet strangely radiant, like a candle's flame flickering in the darkness. With trembling hands, she picked pieces of moldy corn from the trough and placed them to her lips, chewing slowly as if each bite was both salvation and humiliation. For a long moment, Apache Solitario did not move. His instinct told him to turn away. Survival in the desert demanded that each carry their own burden. Compassion, he knew too well, often came at the cost of one's own life. But there was something in the girl's eyes, something unbroken despite her desperation. She looked not like one who had surrendered to misery, but like one who was holding tightly to the last thread of dignity, even while surrounded by animals. He dismounted, the sound startling the pigs and sending them squealing away. The girl froze, her eyes wide, expecting perhaps a scolding or worse. Apache Solitario's voice was low, almost a growl, shaped by years of speaking only to himself and the wind. "Why do you eat with the pigs, Nina?" Her lips quivered, but her answer came with surprising clarity. "Because I am hungry. And because no one else will give me food." The honesty of her words pierced him deeper than any arrow could. He reached into his saddlebag and withdrew the last of his dried meat. It was hardly enough to sustain even one man for a day, yet he knelt before her and placed it in her hands. She stared at it as if it were a gift from heaven, tears filling her eyes before she whispered, "Why would you share with me, a stranger?" "Because," he said simply, "I know hunger." That night, beneath the wide sky where stars shimmered like beads of an endless necklace, the two shared a small fire. The girl, whose name she revealed to be Isabella, spoke in fragments, as though each memory carried both pain and hope. She had once lived in a village across the mountains, a place where bells rang on Sundays and mothers baked bread in clay ovens. But disease had swept through her family, leaving her the only survivor. Alone, she had wandered from town to town, finding only closed doors and harsh refusals. Her journey had ended in the pigsty, where desperation silenced shame. Apache Solitario listened, not with the judgment of a man, but with the silence of one who had also lost everything. He told her little of his own past, only that he was the last of his people. Yet in the glow of the firelight, there was no need for many words. They were two souls carved from the same stone of sorrow, brought together by fate in the most unlikely of places. The following days unfolded like a fragile miracle. He taught her how to gather roots from the desert, how to find water by watching the flight of birds, how to listen to the earth's whispers for guidance. She, in return, shared with him the melodies of her childhood songs, soft hymns that carried warmth even in the cold of night. For the first time in many years, Apache Solitario felt something stir in his chest, not the burden of loneliness, but the fragile seed of companionship. Yet, as with all fragile things, shadows soon crept in. One evening, as they crossed a narrow canyon, they were ambushed by men who had followed the trail of smoke from their fires. Bandits, hungry for both food and cruelty, demanded the girl. "A pretty face like hers," their leader sneered, "is worth more than gold in these lands." Apache Solitario stood tall, bow in hand, his voice steady though his heart thundered. "You will not touch her." The battle was swift, violent. He fought with the strength of a man who had nothing left to lose, arrows flying like whispers of death. Though he struck down two, the others fled into the darkness, vowing to return. But the cost was heavy. An arrow had grazed his side, leaving him bleeding beneath the pale moon. Isabella knelt beside him, her tears falling as she tore her dress to bind his wound. "Why would you risk your life for me?" she asked through sobs. His answer was weak, yet firm, "Because the world has taken too much already. I will not let it take you, too." For days, she nursed him, gathering herbs and whispering prayers she remembered from her mother's lips. Slowly, his strength returned. And in those quiet days, she realized something profound: it was not only his body that she was healing, but also her own heart. Where once she had believed herself unworthy of love or kindness, she now saw that even in the harshest deserts, compassion could bloom. Weeks passed, and word spread through nearby villages of a lone Apache traveling with a girl who had once been seen eating with pigs. But instead of scorn, whispers turned into admiration. People began leaving small offerings near their camps: bread, water, blankets, as though inspired by the courage of their story. It was as if humanity, stirred from slumber, remembered the ancient truth that kindness is contagious. Their journey eventually brought them to a settlement where weary faces looked at them not with suspicion but with curiosity. There, a family offered them shelter. Isabella, once rejected, was welcomed like a daughter, her gentle nature healing the wounds of those around her. Apache Solitario, though he never stayed long in one place, became a figure of legend, a protector who had turned despair into hope. On a night heavy with stars, as the village gathered for a feast in their honor, Isabella stood before them, her voice trembling but strong. "I was once a girl who ate with pigs because no one would share their bread. But a man who had nothing gave me everything: his food, his protection, his heart. If one act of kindness can save a life, imagine what many acts can do. Let us never again turn away from the hungry, the lonely, the forgotten." Tears glistened in the eyes of many as silence gave way to applause. The message was clear, and it traveled like wildfire beyond that night, beyond that village, across valleys and deserts. As for Apache Solitario, he remained what he had always been, a wanderer. Yet he no longer walked the earth as a man alone. For wherever Isabella's song was sung, his spirit lived within it. Their story was not one of tragedy, but of rebirth, proof that even from the lowest troughs of despair, humanity could rise again when fueled by compassion. And so, the legend of the lone Apache and the girl who once ate pig's food became a story carried by generations, a reminder that kindness, even in the smallest measure, has the power to change the course of lives, to turn shame into dignity, and loneliness into love. In the end, it was not survival alone that gave life meaning. It was the willingness to share what little one had, to risk one's strength for another, and to believe, even when the world seemed barren, that hope could still take root.